The night air in Reatrei was thick with the weight of silence, the kind that pressed against your chest and made breathing feel like a labor. The village of Reatrei had always carried whispers of something sinister, a tale woven into the fabric of its people, told and retold in hushed tones as though speaking too loudly would awaken something best left dormant. They called it the Night Curse of Reatrei, a story so deeply ingrained in their culture that even the children knew to fear the forest once dusk crept over the horizon. It was said that hundreds of years ago, a woman named Cerelia had been accused of witchcraft. She was young, beautiful, and strange. Her eyes too piercing, her words too sharp, her knowledge of herbs and remedies too advanced for her time. The villagers, frightened of what they couldn't understand, tied her to a wooden stake in the heart of the forest. The flames licked at her body, and as the fire consumed her, she screamed, not in pain, but in fury. Her curse rippled through the trees, poisoning the soil, staining the moonlight. On the nights of blood, when the moon turns red, I shall return, and those who burn me shall burn with me. For centuries, the legend remained a story. But in Reatrei, the forest never healed. No birds nested in its branches. No hunters returned with game from its shadows. The soil was barren, and the air carried a perpetual chill. No one dared to walk past the moss-covered stones at its edge. Yet every generation, there were whispers of figures in the darkness, of footsteps echoing on moonless nights, of women weeping from within the trees. Clara, a woman in her late 20s, had only recently moved to Reatrei. She was not from the village. Her roots lay in the city, where lights banished shadows and science dismissed superstition. When she inherited her grandmother's small cottage at the edge of Reatrei, she thought it would be the perfect escape from the chaos of her life. Her grandmother had always been peculiar, a woman who left the city decades ago to live alone, speaking only in fragments about watching the moon and never opening the door after midnight. Clara laughed at the oddities, dismissing them as the eccentricities of old age. But soon after moving in, Clara began to notice things. It started with the trees. She would sit on her porch in the evenings, sipping tea, and she swore the branches moved closer to the cottage as dusk deepened. She would blink, and their shapes shifted, like figures leaning in, listening. Then came the sound of whispers, soft, indecipherable, yet undeniably there, floating on the wind at night. They seemed to circle her house, never near enough to catch a word, but always loud enough to unsettle her. The villagers watched Clara with wary eyes. They never stopped her in the street, but their gazes lingered. She overheard snippets when she bought bread or passed through the market. The outsider, they called her. One night, when she stayed out too late, an old man grabbed her arm and hissed, "Do not walk when the night swallows the moon. Stay inside, girl, or she'll find you." His grip was trembling, his eyes wide with fear, as if even speaking of it cursed his tongue. At first, Clara dismissed it all. But then came the first full moon of autumn. The night was heavy with clouds, and Clara, restless, walked to the forest's edge despite the villagers' warnings. Her flashlight flickered weakly, cutting through the fog, and as she stood at the mossy stones, she felt it, an unnatural pull, like the ground itself was breathing. Her chest tightened, her breath caught, and she swore she heard a woman's voice calling her name. Not screaming, not whispering, just calling, clear and calm. Clara. Startled, she stumbled back, dropping her flashlight. Its beam spun wildly across the trees, catching on something pale. For a moment, she thought it was a piece of cloth tangled in the branches. But then it moved. A face, ashen, hollow, with eyes like dying embers, peered from between the trees. Clara froze. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. Never open the door after midnight. She ran, heart pounding, back to the cottage. But when she reached her door, she noticed something etched into the wood. Symbols, carved deep into the grain, symbols she had never seen before. They pulsed faintly, like veins beneath the skin. She backed away, horrified, but the door creaked open on its own. The inside was dark, too dark, though she had left the lamps on before leaving. And then she heard it again. Clara. The curse was not a story. It was real, and she had stepped too close to it. The nights that followed blurred into terror. Objects moved on their own, Shadows twisted unnaturally against her walls, and every night, without fail, the voice called to her. The villagers avoided her entirely now, crossing the street when she walked by. She realized, with a sinking dread, that they knew. They had always known. The curse needed someone, and she had been chosen. Clara became obsessed with learning the truth. She pored over old records, broke into the locked archives at the church, and pieced together fragments of Aurelia's story. The witch had not cursed the village alone. She had bound her spirit to the women of her bloodline. Clara's grandmother had fled the city to hide from it, to protect Clara, but fate had led her back to Reatrei. She wasn't just any outsider. She was Aurelia's last descendant, and the curse was coming to claim her. The final night arrived with a blood moon, swollen and red against the horizon. The forest groaned as though alive, and Clara felt herself being pulled toward it, her feet moving against her will. The trees opened for her, their twisted branches bending like arms welcoming her home. The whispers grew louder, clearer, until they were words. Burn with me, burn with me. At the heart of the forest stood the blackened stake where Aurelia had died centuries ago. Around it, flames erupted, though there was no fuel, no spark. Clara fell to her knees, her body trembling, her skin burning though no fire touched her. From the smoke, a figure emerged, Aurelia herself, her face half-burned, her beauty twisted by rage and grief. She extended her hand, and Clara felt her soul slipping, her body unraveling. The villagers stood at the forest's edge, watching in silence. None dared to move. They knew this was the way of things. Clara screamed, her voice swallowed by the night. But as her body writhed, something shifted inside her. She saw flashes of Aurelia's pain, the betrayal, the injustice, the flames consuming her. And Clara understood. This was not madness. This was vengeance. Aurelia had never been evil. She had been murdered. With her last strength, Clara whispered, I will not burn with you, but I will not forget you. The flames roared, the forest shook, and for a heartbeat, silence reigned. When the villagers dared to look again, the stake was gone, the fire was gone, and Clara was gone. Only the whispers remained. To this day, they say the curse of Reatrei lingers. On nights when the moon turns red, the trees seem to breathe, and if you stand at the edge of the forest, you may hear a woman's voice calling your name. Some say it is Aurelia. Some say it is Clara. But all agree on one thing: no one escapes the Night Curse of Reatrei.